Welcome to Prophecy Views. I'm Brian Barton. I wanted to come to you today with a little bit of an urgent message. The reason for the urgency is there's just so much information out there regarding jabs or vaccines, and what you do at this point is up to you, but I want to discuss it a little bit and see if this lines up with what you're thinking, because we want to take everything back to Scripture, especially when we're dealing with issues that are lining up with Bible prophecy. So I want to take a look at some Scripture, and then I want to show you a couple of video clips, and I want to bring an article to you that is going to emphasize some points that I want to make. And today we're going to start in Revelation 13. And some friends of mine at End Time Ministries, they call this Satan's chapter of the Bible. And I would agree with that because it gives a large depiction of what Satan is going to do in his final 3.5 years. So we're going to take a look, and having given you a moment now to turn to Revelation 13, we're going to start at verse 16, and we're going to go through the end of the chapter, which is verse 18. Now, we're going to start off with a he in this passage, and it's going to be mentioned a couple of times through these 2 or 3 verses. And understand here, if you back up to verse 11, it's going to give you an idea of who this person is. And in verse 11, it talks about a beast that comes up, that rises up, and he has 2 horns like a lamb, but he speaks like a dragon. So this is going to be a religious leader. He's coming to you. He's presenting himself as a lamb. Jesus Christ was the lamb that taketh away the sin of the world. So this individual is going to be a religious leader, but what's coming out of his mouth is going to be speaking like the dragon. Now we know that to be Satan. So if we look at other scriptures, we can put this together and tell you that from verse 11, it's referring to the false prophet, and he's going to be promoting the Antichrist. So it goes through a little bit of a depiction, but we're going to start here in verse 16. So it's talking about the false prophet here, the religious leader that lines up with the Antichrist. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. And then it gives us a little piece of wisdom in 18. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So 666. All right. So we've taken a look at this scripture. There is an entity out there called Project Veritas, and they have done some undercover work, and they do a phenomenal job at doing undercover work. And they've been kind of really hit hard in the social media platforms. And so from time to time, they're taken off YouTube, taken off Facebook. They're blocked. But we want to go and take a look at some of the projects they've done in the last little bit, because they refer to what the pharmaceutical industry and the government have in mind for people that are vaccinated or are not vaccinated. And you're going to see here, now what we just read in this passage is a system. It's going to have to be a cashless society, and Europe is heavily a cashless society. Now we know that the Antichrist from other scriptures will not have full control of every corner of the earth. It says that Edom, Ammon, and Moab will escape out of his hand. Well, that's all in Jordan. We know in Revelation 12, verse 14, a depiction of the United States, 2 wings of a great eagle, that are protecting and nourishing Israel, Jerusalem as specifically, during that final 3.5 years leading up to the Battle of Armageddon, which is Satan's wrath on the earth. So we know we can take a couple of things from that. In fact, it says in Revelation 12 that she is, talking about the nation of Israel, she is protected and nourished from the face of the serpent. So it's a very bold, and we've covered this before in other videos. It's a very bold, in your face, we are definitely standing against the one world government, and we are going to protect Israel no matter what the one world government says. So the United States apparently is not going to fall in line with the Antichrist, and neither is Israel, because you don't go and produce war against a nation that you already control. So the United States and the nation of Israel and the nation of Jordan are specifically mentioned in Scripture to not go along with the edicts of the Antichrist. But we see here in 17 that the majority of the earth will be under his control. So no man might buy or sell save he that has the mark of the beast. Now he's going to we know he's going to come out of Europe, but in situations that he controls, you will not be able to buy or sell. You will be locked out of the economy unless you take his mark. And in taking his mark, you're going to have to pledge allegiance to him. And the reason this message is so urgent, before we go into these two videos I want to show you, and then I have an article after that as well. The reason this is so important, when the mark of the beast does come, and this is why we need to stand our ground right now. When the mark of the beast comes, if you take that mark of the beast, and then later you or your friends or your family decide that they want to be saved, you will not. Scripture says you will not be able to be saved if you have taken the mark of the beast. And we're going to go to that scripture in just a little bit. So we'll follow up with that. But if you take that mark of the beast, whether it be a vaccine or whatever it is that they're pushing, I believe it may very well be a vaccine, because everybody that's not saved and has their name in the Lamb's Book of Life will have the mark. So even in these nations that the Antichrist doesn't necessarily control, the people in those nations may very well, it appears, that they will still be able to take that mark. Well, let's take a look at our current situation with this vaccine. How many people do you know that have the vaccine and they are pushing it hard? How many people do you know that don't have the vaccine and refuse to get it? So you're seeing that set up now, and we're going to prove it even more. Let's take a look at this first video.
Despite these doubts, Durant appears to embrace his company's role in pushing policies that, quote, inconvenience the unvaccinated into second-rate citizens.
The only way people really act come to action is it affects the public. So it's like, if you're working for a big company, you're probably losing jobs. Best believe you're going to be the first one in the line. I mean, if you can't work, that's one thing, but like a second-rate citizen, you can't do anything on normal citizens. Inconvenience them to the point where it's like, it's the odd, like, not the odd, but I'm not as much.
So now I apologize for it is edited out language, but nonetheless language, but that's just this gentleman's way of communicating. But what he's saying is we're already doing that. Now, granted, the desire of the one world government will be much stronger than the pressures that we're seeing now. And we may be a little bit isolated from it at that time. But nonetheless, let's take a look at this gentleman from Pfizer echoing the same sentiments as the gentleman we just watched. And let's see if it lines up with what Revelation 13 was telling us, that you're going to have to have some mark of identification, some mark, maybe even of saying that you're vaccinated against a certain upcoming pandemic, or you will not be able to buy or sell. Now, in taking that mark or that vaccine, whatever it turns out to be, you will have to pledge allegiance at that time to a one world leader, the one world government. You'll have to pledge your allegiance in some form or another. So never take a pledge of allegiance that doesn't include God being the ultimate authority and pledging your allegiance to God first. But let's take a listen to this. This gentleman is from Pfizer.
For instance, like the city needs like vax cards and everything. It's just like about making it so inconvenient for like unvaccinated people to the point where they're just like, F it, I'll get it. You know?
What do you mean?
like if you are restricting people that are unvaccinated from doing anything, and then like vaccinated people are allowed to do anything they want, eventually they're just going to be like, let me just get vaccinated.
Okay, so now we're seeing the type of pressure that they want to put on people that are unvaccinated. And we took a look at Revelation 13, 16 to 18 and got an idea of what Scripture said it was going to be like at the very, very last 3.5 years. Now, we haven't even entered the final 7 yet, so don't get jumpy on me. But we want to know for sure whether or not we are really in the time that Scripture talks about. And if this doesn't lead you to believe that we are leading up to it and we are sitting on the cusp of it, you're not paying attention. Now, I suppose the next question would be, what happens to those that take the mark of the beast? But before we do that, I want to introduce an article to you from The Blaze that says that the Australian Prime Minister wants to create a new economy, and you can take a look at this article yourself, wants to create a new economy, and the people that are unvaxxed will be shut out of it. And, you know, that's a pretty serious thing, and it certainly sounds like what John was talking about in Revelation 13 again. And so you can just see the article right here for yourself. Now, to answer the question, what happens to those that take the mark of the beast? Is there a way of getting rid of it? Is there a way of getting out from underneath of it? Well, not according to Scripture. Spiritually speaking, if you take the mark of the beast, I don't see any way back for you. Let's take a look. And this is, again, we're still in Revelation 13, but we're going to back up to verse 8 a little bit. And this is what it says. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the Lamb's book of life, slain from the foundation of the world. So if you take the mark of the beast, your name will be taken out of the Lamb's book of life. Now that is the book of people that you're good to go. We're going to take another look at it in the very next chapter, just one more chapter over to Revelation 14. And this is, for those of you that want to turn there, this is verses 9 through 11. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever. Now that's a pretty long time, you have to admit that. And they have no rest day or night who worship the beast and his image. Now listen, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. So, ladies and gentlemen, it appears from Scripture, and I believe there's other references to this, that there's no coming back once you take the mark of the beast. So you really need to educate yourself on what Scripture says is coming down the road. This is critical. Don't worry about what Britney Spears is doing. Don't worry about what's going on in the National Enquirer. You really need to pay attention to what's going on with the news and what Scripture says is coming down the road, because we want to be able to know where we stand and be able to avoid certain things. Scripture says that even if possible, even the very elect might be deceived. So folks, we need to get your foundation secure to where somebody can't come along and knock you off of it and what you believe. Stay with us, and we're going to guide you through that in this last several years that we have left. Visit us at prophecyviews.com. Keep up with what we're doing. It's great to be back on here facing the camera again, right with you folks. We're going to do another little series on the beasts that are mentioned in Daniel and Revelation, as you can see here, and you'll want to catch us for that. Go to prophecyviews.com and catch up with us there and support us. God bless.